Okay. So, welcome everybody. Всім привіт. У нас сьогодні дуже особливий гість, Фред Рітчін. I'm going to tell them a little bit what I know of you, and then you can tell about yourself. Okay?
Yeah, but I won't understand you, but that's
I'll
okay.
just say what I said. Я буду перекладати сьогодні на українську, але на англійську. Коротше, ви поняли. Фред працює в найкращій школі фотографії в світі, ICP, International Center of Photography. Колись в дитинстві я роздруковувала собі цю картинку і думала, що от як було б класно коли-небудь якось побачити цю школу вживу. І те, що він сьогодні з нами тут на нашому неформальному зумі просто прийшов якби дати фідбек, це для мене таке трошки нереальний момент. So I just told them that you work at the best photography school in the world, which I dreamt of seeing at least in real life, and I had like a picture of it in my notebook or somewhere when I was a teenager. And it's a big deal that today we are just casually talking with you and you can look at their work and give your feedback while being a, I don't know, teacher, but I don't know if you're a member or founding member or dean or director at the school.
I've been teaching there since 1979.
1970. Він викладав в цій школі з 79-го року. So many of them were not even born yet. Більшість з вас ще не народились, коли він викладав в цій школі.
Those were the days of film and black and white film and printing paper.
Тоді ще була ця фотографія плівкова, чорно-біла і друк в цих темних кімнат. Oh, we are much more now. We are way more now. Okay, that's good. So now you can tell more about what you do currently.
Okay, so...
But give me time to translate.
Okay, I will speak slowly.
No, just give me a break. You can speak normal.
I can speak normal. I will speak normal. For a while, I did things like I was picture editor of the New York Times Sunday magazine. So I assigned photographers, I edited photographs. Every Sunday, the magazine would come out and we published 1,600,000 copies.
Окей. Раніше, до того, як він був викладачем фотографії, він працював фоторедактором в журналі New York Sunday Times. Вони вибирали фотографії, і він давав завдання фотографам. І наклад був, скільки там, мільйон? 1,300,000?
1,600,000.
1,600,000 примірників кожен тиждень.
But then I found that working in newspapers and magazines was kind of like a formula, and I decided more and more to go into teaching because it was the most open for discussion, for possibility.
And formula, what do you mean by formula?
Template. There were certain things you could do, certain things you cannot do.
Потім він зрозумів, що працювати редактором в журналі – це завжди якби по накатанні одне й те саме. Є речі, які можна робити, які не можна. І він вирішив піти в навчання, де можна більше співпрацювати з фотографами, бути в діалозі там і якось мати більше місця для маневру. Авторський переклад. Yeah.
It's okay?
Yeah.
So now for the last many years, I teach a lot of photography and human rights and social justice. And usually the students come from everywhere in the world, all over the world. Right now I've had students from Ukraine, Armenia, Azerbaijan, India, Brazil, everywhere.
За останні 40 років він викладає предмет фотографія і соціальна справедливість і працює з фотографами з цих всіх країн, які він перечислив, України, Арменії і там всього світу, Азербайджан.
It's good?
Yeah.
So mostly what we do is I work with students to make projects that try to make the world a better place.
Тобто він працює з студентами, які роблять проекти, а ці проекти направлені на те, щоб покращити якось світ, в якому ми живемо.
And there are many, many successful projects that help the world, and I'll show you some of them.
Є дуже багато успішних проєктів, які дійсно допомогли, і я вам покажу деякі з них.
And I'll also give you some ideas for different ways that you can work as photographers.
Я вам дам декілька ідей стосовно того, як ви можете працювати як фотограф.
But I ask you one thing, which is to please ask questions if you have questions, and don't be shy.
Але я вас попрошу задавати питання і не соромитись, і задавати як можна більше питань.
Because here we're all small rectangles together. Nobody's bigger than anybody else.
Може, тут всі рівні, немає нікого, хто більший за іншого. That was a short one.
I hope it's a good one. So am I okay to share my screen? Does that work? And have...
Wait, I'm gonna allow everybody to share the screen.
And have sound too, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, now you can share it.
Okay, so I just want to show you at the beginning a fun project that people are doing more and more, which is you make a photograph and you send it to somebody else, and they make a photograph in response to your photograph, and then you could send it to somebody else who does the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my school just recently did it. It turned out pretty ugly, but I'm happy that they tried. Він каже, покажу вам зараз приклад. Є така простенька вправа, коли одна людина робить фотографію, надсилає її іншій людині, і ця інша людина робить як відповідь на цю фотографію. І шле наступні, і так далі.
Okay, so for 1 minute, 2 minutes, I'll show you one with Marcelo Brodsky, who's done this. He's from Argentina. He's done this with many people. And then I'll show you many other things and talk about your work as well.
Покажу фотограф цього.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
And
Приклади робіт фотографа з Аргентини.
I hope you could hear the sound when it plays.
Oh yeah, we do.
So one person makes a photograph, sends it to the other, who sends it back, and then the first person makes a second photograph. I'm going to stop sharing. Now I have to find that and shut it. Okay. So when I looked at your work, I had a sense you were kind of doing that already.
Коли я подивився на ваші фотографії, то мене склалось враження, що ви теж так робите, що ви ніби відповідаєте на фотографію один одному.
So I'm going to show you just a sequence. I edited your photographs, the ones I had. I picked about 4 or 5 images from each of you, and I just made a PowerPoint sequence.
Тому я вибрав по 5-6 фотографій з кожного з вас і створив з них таку добірку, послідовність.
So you see this? So I'm just going to quickly go through it just to say what I got out of your pictures.
Я швидко просто пройдусь по них, щоб розказати вам, що я зрозумів з ваших фотографій. So what you meant is that the seers respond to each other, because I noticed that you took pictures from each author and they were not like interrupted or mixed, but there was like one author and then the other author. So there was a sequence with authors.
Yeah, I kept your individual voice with 4 or 5 pictures each person.
Mm-hmm.
I basically did it in the order that you gave it to me, and just like that. But my question to you guys is, when you see all them together, what do you feel? Do you think there's a theme or an idea or a central feeling from all together?
Коли ви дивитесь на ці фотографії всі разом, які у вас виникають відчуття? Чи є у вас якась, whether they have an idea for all of it? Like, what, how did you...
Let's say this is a group exhibition. When you look at it all together, what's the feeling of the exhibition?
Як уявіть, якби це групова була виставка, і це все фотографії одної виставки, які у вас почуття? Юля wrote United.
You're all united. What else? Do you feel sadness? Do you feel happiness? Do you feel hope? What do you feel?
I think it's quite like about different perspectives of seeing the same thing in different ways.
Так, але яке почуття? Почуття.
What is the same thing that people see in different ways?
Or
I would say it gives me some feeling of, I don't know, like they all look sad to me a bit, even the ones that shouldn't be sad. Like when I saw them individually, they weren't so sad to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also started seeing some recurring patterns, and they all look yes, as Julia wrote, pretty united.
I'll let her translate herself. Лер, переклади себе.
Я сказала, що вони всі разом виглядають доволі сумно. От. Навіть ті фотографії, які самі по собі не дуже сумно виглядали, але коли вони якось разом переглядаються, вони всі якісь дуже меланхолійні і печальні.
Does it surprise you that there's a sadness?
Чи дивує вас те, що вони сумні?
I think no, because it's our reality of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Саме каже, що не дивує, тому що це наша реальність.
But you also feel a hopefulness? Do you feel a curiosity? Do you feel a kind of dreams or nightmares? What else do you feel from all of that?
А лише які почуття там надії, чи цікавості, якісь кошмари, чи мрії? Ще якісь почуття виникають у вас? Some people wrote in the chat feeling of home, loneliness, feeling of transformation, loss of home, melancholic, yes. Mm-hmm.
I think, sorry, you can say it.
I have the word, but I don't know how to say it in English. Туга.
So it's sadness, I think.
I think it's
homesickness.
You can continue.
I think I have like mixed feeling of guilt also, because I'm in a safe place right now, and basically when I see all of this, I have some kind of feeling of guilt.
Настя, лучше ти будеш писати, бо в тебе дуже шумно. Настя казала про почуття вини, що каже, коли вона дивиться на ці фотографії, не почуття вини, бо вона в безпечному місці. Саша?
Кажу українською, це наче пісок, який висипається з рук. Я не знаю, як це метафора. Може, ти допоможеш мені перекласти?
It's like a feeling of sand going through your hands. Що ти маєш на увазі? Що це за почуття?
I wrote in the chat, it's like feeling of lost in our home, our reality, that our home is destroying right now. And all these photos, they describe this feeling of lost fundamental feeling of safetyness.
Okay.
Саша каже про втрачене почуття дому і безпеки. When I showed these pictures at my school, because I currently do masters in Germany, people noticed that all pictures and colors are muted, so even the colorful pictures look black and white. Like nobody agreed, but there is very little color, and even if it's present, everything looks colorless. Коли я показувала ваші фотографії в школі, помітили, що навіть коли колір присутній, все виглядає досить таким безкольоровим. Тобто вони всі дуже приглушені, навіть коли багато чорно-білого, але коли колір теж є, воно все рівно таке позбавлено кольору.
So I'm the outside person. So to me, I could also say that your photographs I find very interesting, first of all. I think you guys are very curious about things. You're interested in things. I think there is a sadness, but I think you're also very thoughtful. You're very serious. You mean well. You want good things to happen. And you also do have a kind of unity, united, that you have similar kind of hopes and dreams and thoughts and introspections that come through. So for me, I learned a lot. I found it very interesting and very important what you have to say.
То я, як людина ззовні, як аутсайдер, можу сказати, що я з вашої фотографії зрозумів, що ви дуже такі цікаві, у вас є і мрії, і надії, і вам багато що, ну, якби, як це сказати, curious, любопитні.
Зацікавлені.
І ви дійсно об'єднані, є у вас якісь, типу, видно, що ви разом, звичайно, є і сум, але і багато позитивних речей, які вивчив, ну, яких навчився я від вас.
So oftentimes on the outside, we see Ukraine in terms right now, unfortunately, in terms of violence and destruction. And what you guys are showing is something very, very different. And I think because a lot of the work I do is what I call the photography of peace instead of the photography of war, there's lots of things to be said that are not being said that you guys are saying. And I think it's important to say those things. And what I can do is now show you some projects by other people in other situations, which might be interesting to you, and give you also some ideas of what you can do both individually and as a group.
I'm trying to make notes. So, Ukrainian. Так як зараз світ бачить Україну, це про розруху і страждання. І те, як ви показуєте, це щось абсолютно інше. І я себе люблю називати експертом не воєнної фотографії, а мирної фотографії. І хочу зараз вам показати декілька прикладів, як можна показати такі трагічні речі з іншої сторони, які ви можете використовувати в своїх проєктах.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Чи всім зрозуміло, чи є питання в когось?
So no questions, you're okay.
I think for now, everybody's okay.
Okay. I always have
Depends
trouble.
on what you're going to show us.
Okay, I always have trouble talking to rectangles, so I'm doing my best. So I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so you see?
Yeah.
So a lot of photography is about reacting to things after they happen.
В основному фотографія – це реакція на речі, які вже сталися.
But there are many other kinds of photography.
Але є багато інших видів фотографій.
So, for example, this photograph, which is very ordinary, is probably the most important photograph ever made about the environment on the earth.
Ця фотографія з одного боку дуже очевидна. Я найважливішою фотографією про навколишній світ, природу на планеті.
It was made in Christmas Eve 1968 by an astronaut. And it's the
Була
first,
зроблена на Різдво в 1968 році астронавтом.
and it's the first time we saw the Earth so lonely, so fragile, so vulnerable by itself from the outside. We never saw that before, the Earth from the outside.
Це перший раз ми побачили Землю зі сторони, з боку, таку самотню, вразливу. Такої точки зору ми ще ніколи не мали.
And because of it, we now have Earth Day 16 months after this photograph. Earth Day began, which still exists every year. There were many postage stamps. And in many ways, this was the beginning of the environmental movement, this photograph.
Через цю фотографію ми зараз маємо День Землі, який почав відбуватися трошки більше року після того, як ця фотографія була зроблена. І взагалі початок руху за збереження навколишнього середовища поклала саме ця фотографія.
So sometimes very ordinary looking photographs could have enormous power.
Тому іноді абсолютно звичайні на вигляд фотографії можуть мати дуже велику силу.
So sometimes one of the interesting things to do is to pick a theme, an idea. Hope. How do you photograph hope? If everybody photographed hope, what would it look like? Would it look like a tree? Would it look like a dog? Would it look like the sky? What would it look like? Or love, or loss, or future? Sometimes groups of photographers together can pick a theme for 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month and do it. And then together, it makes a big statement that other people can look at and they could understand much more what's happening for you, for Ukraine, in your minds.
Тому хороша вправа могла бути взяти якусь тему, наприклад, надія, любов, втрата, майбутнє, і спробувати її зобразити. Якби всі люди на світі почали фотографувати те, що для них означає надія. Що б це могло бути? Це собака, дерево, їхній дім, близькі. And then I lost the second half. What you said. Тому, деякі фотографи об'єднуються і роблять знімки на такі теми. So some photographers gather and do pictures on those topics.
Yeah, I mean, to me, for example, and we come back to this, if I was working with you, I would give you the assignment to make one picture of hope. What would it look like? What would hope look like?
They actually had this topic. Was it for this week? Це ми на цей тиждень знімали надію? Yeah, this week they had to photograph hope, actually.
So I'd love to see the result.
Yeah, we can show it later.
Okay. So this is one thing I do with my students, which I think is fun. It's called interactive portraits. So lots of time you make a portrait of somebody, but you decide who they are. And what I have my students do is make a portrait and then ask the person, is this you? Does this represent you? Is this photograph who you are? And the person responds and they record it. So I'll show you. Well, maybe interpret first.
I'm writing. I didn't really get, so the people have to photograph somebody who they associate as themselves.
No, they photograph somebody, they show them the photograph and they ask them, is this you? Does this represent you?
Наступна вправа – це інтерактивні портрети, коли вони фотографують когось, якусь людину, і потім показують людині цей портрет і запитують, чи це дійсно ти, чи це тебе репрезентує.
So Ashima, one of my students, photographed this man and she asked him, is this you? And I'll play you what happened, what he said.
І далі, після того, як вони показують фотографію, вони записують відповідь цієї людини, що вона думає про цей портрет. А він зараз заграє, включить цей звук.
Do you think that photo represents you?
No, because I'm smiling.
Do you think that photo represents you?
No, because I'm a smiling person. I actually like to be smiling, you know. I do that just about most of the day.
So if you're not smiling, it's not you.
Huh?
So if you're not smiling, it's not you.
Yes, it's me, but I mean, that picture, I mean, definitely, I don't think it really tells me, because it more look like I'm sad or something like that.
So the man is saying, does this represent you? And he says, no, because I'm a guy who smiles. That's not me. You may think it's me, but it's not me. It's sort of me, but I'm somebody who usually smiles. So that way the person gets to talk back.
Тобто цей чоловік сказав, що ні, він не згоден, що це він, тому що він не посміхається. Він дуже така людина, яка багато посміхається весь день, і на цій фотографії він виглядить якимось трошки сумним, тому було б краще, якби він посміхався.
Or here's another one. She asks him, this is the portrait of you. Is this who you are?
Ще один приклад, вона зробила портрет.
Do you think this is a photo that depicts you? That says who you are?
No,
Why not?
because I don't think any picture ever will.
Why?
Because it's just, I don't know. You can't see inside of a person in a picture. You can see parts of them that leak through, but that's just a glimpse.
So the man is saying this does not represent me because photographs could never see inside a person. It's not me. So the man talks back to the photograph of himself.
Цей чоловік відповів на свою ж фотографію, що вона не показує те, хто він є, тому що жодна фотографія ніколи не зможе показати його особистість і те, ким він насправді є.
I have another student who's indigenous, Native American, and when he does portraits, he asks questions like as a text message and the people respond and he makes the portrait. So it's not just a picture, but it's a dialogue. Make sense?
So he's taking pictures and then he texts with them.
There's the text back and forth becomes part of the portrait.
Ага.
In other words, he incorporates the text message as part of the portrait.
Цей фотограф фотографував людей з корінного населення, і їхній діалог був якби вбудований вже в фотографію. Should I translate what was on it, or it's not that important?
No, we'll go back. There's too many other things, but this is my student Ashwarya, and she did a self-portrait with her husband, and when you click, this is what happens.
Це його студентка, яка зробила автопортрет зі чоловіком. Якщо нажати на фотографію, ось що з'являється. На ній написано, I'm going to translate where it says, поверніться в свою країну, нам не потрібні need you, or нам не треба ваш або ваш вид тут. Це Америка, повертайтесь назад.
So it's like this, and then you could see it like this. So one of the things that you guys could think about is using words more with your images, if you want to, in different ways. These are already a few different ways you can do it.
Тому ви можете думати про те, як використовувати слова в своїх фотографіях, якщо хочете. Є багато різних способів це робити.
And this is a called Ritchin. It's a famous book. And what he did was he portrayed people, rich people and poor people, and then he asked them to write something on the portrait. So this woman says, this picture does not reflect my personality. I'm not an empty person. I have a lot of feelings and stand up for what I think. And she's one of the rich people.
Ця книжка називається «Багаті і бідні», де сфотографовані багаті і бідні. І ця жінка сказала, що ця фотографія не відображає мою особистість, тому що я не пуста людина, в мене є багато почуттів, і я можу постояти за те, що я вірю. And she's rich or poor?
Rich.
Okay, but they didn't know they're gonna end up in a book about rich and poor.
Well, he was photographing two different buildings, a rich building and a poor building. And I'll show you how it works. This is a poor person.
А це бідна людина. Тут написано ми виглядаємо як звичайні люди, у нас жахливе життя.
So she's saying we have a terrible life. So he's giving them the possibility to speak.
Тобто фотограф дає можливість людям, окрім того, що їх фотографує, сказати їм щось.
And then in the book, he does a rich person against a poor person. The one on my left is my all-time favorite one, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if you don't need to translate everything, but
Oh, I can't read it.
I'll read it to you. Edgar looks splendid here. His power and strength of character come through. You want to translate? Or...
Тут протиставляється... It's the same book, right?
Same book.
В цій книжці зліва багаті люди справа бідні, і це одна зліва його найулюбленіших фотографій. Тут написано, Едгар виглядає тут чудесно, його сила характеру якби наскрізь відчувається в цій фотографії.
Did you do the whole paragraph?
No, just the 2 sentences.
Okay. He's a very private person who is not demonstrative of his affection. That has never made me unhappy. I accept him as he is. We are totally devoted to each other. And she signs it Regina Goldstein. And then it says, may you be as lucky in marriage.
Написано, він дуже така замкнута людина, яка не проявляє свої почуття, і він ніколи не зробив мене нещасливою. Я приймаю його таким, як він є. Ми абсолютно вірні один одному, і я бажаю всім бути такими щасливими в подружньому житті.
But at the top, the man writes something completely different. He says, my wife is acceptable, our relationship is satisfactory.
А зверху чоловік написав, моя жінка якби більш-менш, наші відносини задовільні.
So she thinks their marriage is fantastic. He's amazing. It's wonderful. And he says, my wife is acceptable.
Жінка думає, що у них надзвичайно щасливий шлюб, а чоловік каже, що в мене жінка, в принципі, окей.
And on the right, the poor people, the picture says, we're a very emotional and tight family, like the Three Musketeers. Poverty sucks, but it brings us closer together.
А справа написано, ця фотографія каже, що ми дуже емоційно пов'язана сім'я. Як три мушкетери, бідність – це не класно, але вона робить нас ближче.
So I'm going to continue, but I'm asking you a question. Are these things interesting to you as ideas for your own work?
Що ви думаєте про ці приклади, як чи цікаві вони для ваших робіт, для ваших проєктів? They write in the chat, yes, very.
Okay, I got one. I can only see a few people on my screen.
I would like to try, yes. Yeah, people write in the chat, yes, yes, yes.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, some of them actually have tried and keep doing the text. Although some people say, oh, but you're not a designer, you're not choosing the right typography. Maybe you should stay away from putting words in the pictures.
No, that doesn't matter. This is terrible typography. I love terrible typography.
Він каже, я кажу, що дехто там з моїх кіл, коли дивилися фотографії, казали, вони ж не дизайнери, вони там не вміють шрифт правильно вибрати, може все-таки не треба слова друкувати на фотографіях, а Фред каже, що я обожнюю жахливий шрифт. І немає різниці, в принципі. Чим гірше, тим краще.
This is Renika Dykster. She's from the Netherlands, and she does diptychs of soldiers and other people, two pictures together, and I thought to show you. This is the Israeli army, she's civilian, and then she joins.
Це фотографка Ренека Дайкстра з Нідерландів, вона робить диптихи фотографій солдатів, я так зрозуміла, в цивільному одязі і в звичайному, з різних країн.
So the idea is somebody could be in their office, at home, they could be the mother at home and a worker outside. This is Shani, again the Israeli army, but this is 4 pictures she did. This is before the army, when she joins, when she's in the army, and when she leaves the army.
То тут навіть серія вийшло, що це якби до армії, ось ця серія. Наступний кадр це був вже вона в армії. And which one is after the army?
On the right here.
Окей, справа, це вже після армії.
And this is a guy who joins the French Foreign Legion.
А це хлопець, який вступив в французький легіон.
This is somebody also from Netherlands, Claire Felicie, and this is, one of them is her son before he joins the military, in the military, and after the military.
Ця фотографка сфотографувала свого сина до армії, коли він був в армії, і вже після.
The same here.
But she photographed not only her son, but also other men as well.
No, several guys.
Да, не тільки свого сина, інших хлопців теж.
But it's before, during, and after. The idea is, how are people changed?
Показати, наскільки люди змінюються. І чи змінюються взагалі.
And this is one by Monica Haller, which I think is really important, is she worked with a friend of hers from university who was in the US military, and he was a medic. And then what she did was she published actually 50 different books with people who were in the military, or their parents, their family, their friends. And you can actually see on the website on the left, you can get the PDF. And what she did with him was collect photographs from the period of being at war, like these that he made with his cell phone, and also his texts. And he wrote something really important here, which many events during my time in Iraq were too complex, too horrific, or beyond my understanding. There were simply too many things I witnessed there in a given day to process, so I stored them as photos to figure out later. Pictures create a concrete reality. At least I know these things happen. They continue to serve that purpose. So the pictures helped him to figure out his memories, his trauma, his pain, because she helped him make a book out of it. And like I'm saying here on the right, you see she did this with 50 different people, and you could see it on her website. Many of the books are published there.
Угу. Ця фотографка, вона працювала з ветеранами війни в різних точках, яка опрацьовувала їхні ж фотографії, які вони робили на свої телефони чи камери під час війни, і їхні тексти. І таким чином вона допомагала їм опрацьовувати ці переживання. І на її сайті можна побачити там вже виданих там декілька таких книжок, можна скачати PDF і їхні записи. І на цьому слайді написано, що якби те, що я переживав під час війни, воно було надто складним для мого розуміння, того я робив фотографії, щоб розібратися з цим пізніше. І вони продовжують, якби ці фотографії служать цій цілі і надалі. Вони допомагають мені зрозуміти, що сталося. І принаймні, там написано, я принаймні знаю точно, що це сталося.
And I think one thing that she does very well is combine drawings with photographs and with text. It's not just photographs.
І вона дуже добре поєднує фотографії, текст і малюнки. Це не тільки фотографії.
So this is a project I worked on where civilians in Iraq were given cameras to make pictures of their daily life. And
це тут проєкт, де звичайним мирним жителям в Іраці дали камеру, щоб вони самі зафіксували своє щоденне життя.
While their country was at war.
В той час, як в країні була війна.
So this is the guys at the barber shop.
Це, ну, ви поняли, барбершоп, чоловіки, які стрижуть.
And this is a friend who studies at the university.
Подруга, яка вчиться в університеті.
And this is going to the dentist.
Це фотографія, як хтось пішов до стоматолога.
And I've given many lectures where I talk about this photograph as being the most important for me from the Iraq War, because it shows that the Iraqi people are just like everybody else. They're not to be defined by violence. They go to the dentist just like everybody else does.
І ця фотографія одна з найважливіших фотографій взагалі для мене, тому що вона показує, що люди в Іраці такі самі, як і ми. Вони ходять до стоматолога, і вони, якби те, що в країні війна, це не ідентифікує їх як людей якихось там менших, чи які відрізняються від нас.
And I think the whole project cost us about $200, and CNN ran it on TV, on television, for about 7 minutes worldwide.
And us? Who do you mean us? It cost us?
The people who provided the cameras and film, you know, it cost about $200, and I did the exhibition with somebody else.
Ну, він не уточняє, кому нам, але каже, нам коштував цей проект десь $200 на те, щоб купити камери і плівку. І CNN показав ці фотографії, ролик про цей проект 7 хвилин на всю Україну.
And this is another project by a student of mine, Sumaya, and in New York, and she's Muslim, and her mother dresses traditionally. She's from Sarajevo, and so she made a travel guide to New York for her mother. What is it to be a Muslim woman if she came to New York? And all the pictures are of Sumaya in different situations.
Ця фотографка зробила такий тревел-гід для своєї мами про те, як це бути мусульманкою в Нью-Йорку, і вона фотографувала сама себе, автопортрет робила.
It's a travel guide from the point of view of being a Muslim woman in New York. You know, what are the special things to know about, where to go, the holidays, and that sort of thing.
То вона розповідала там про визначені місця, про свята, куди варто йти, куди не варто йти.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So I have many, many more things to show you. What I'm trying to do is show you projects to give you ideas of different ways of doing things.
Є ж дуже багато проєктів, які можна показати. Я намагаюся вам просто дати ідеї для того, щоб ви, ну, як можна ще по-різному опрацьовувати теми.
And my question to you so far, do any of these projects interest you specifically, and why?
Моє питання до вас, які з цих проєктів вас зацікавило конкретно, можливо, якийсь з них вас зацікавив?
Я скажу по-українськи, це той, там, де фотографували до армії, під час армії і після, оцю зміну емоцій і взагалі людини, її постаті, навіть внутрішньо якісь зміни.
Oksana says the project about the people before and after war got her interested so that the person can see the changes that occur.
Okay.
So I liked the project of Monica the most, and the one about giving people cameras so they could photograph their daily lives. I think they are a bit similar to what we are doing here in some ways, and I also think they help the process to comprehend what is happening right now, because for me personally it's a little hard to understand that even though horrible things are happening, daily life still continues and people are still normal, usual people, and it happens like now, every day. It's hard for me to not think of war as something abstract that happens somewhere, even though it happens here, and all of us experience it in some way these days.
Переклади, Спеллер.
Коротше, я сказала, що мені найбільше сподобались проекти Моніки, тієї, що знімала, не знімала, а робила книги про фотографії ветеранів, і проект там, де людям дали камери, і вони знімали свої щоденні життя. Мені здається, що це багато в чому схоже на те, що ми робимо, ці два проекти. І мені здається, це типу досить корисні речі, вони допомагають якось осмислити, вкласти в голову те, що зараз відбувається, і співвіднести те, що хоча зараз війна і відбуваються якісь страшні речі, тим не менш, типу, реальність нікуди не дівається, і ми далі так само живемо. Бо мені особисто, наприклад, трохи складно зрозуміти, що війна – це типу щось, що відбувається зараз з нами, всіма якоюсь мірою, і такі речі допомагають мені якось скласти світ назад докупи.
Дякую. Володя?
Well, I really liked the idea to let the person who been photographed to speak for themselves, because, well, I'm really agreed with that man who said that none of the possible portraits of him would really represent his personality, because all of the possible portraits would be just a glimpse of his personality, and well, I think that is a good thought. And well, I really like the project with just Iraq ordinary people who photographed their ordinary life, because, well, let me be clear, I never really imagined these people in this way, and I think that it was a really clever thing to let them speak for themselves and to show what they really are.
Okay.
Володя, перекладеш себе? Коротко.
Так, ну, мені дуже сподобалась ідея там, де людям дали сказати за себе про їхні портрети, тому що там один чоловік дуже точно підмітив, що жоден з портретів не може передати його справжню якби особистість, тому що кожен з можливих портретів це такі я англійською розумію, слухаю українською сказати не можу, як це...
Ну, не показує людину дійсно, яка вона є.
Так, всього лише одну сторону. І мені також дуже сподобався проєкт з фотографіями, зробленими звичайними іракцями, тому що мені трохи соромно це казати, тому що це якось не так, як ти собі уявляєш цих людей. І те, що вони сказали за себе з камерою, з фотографіями, це дуже класно.
Okay. You wanted to add something, Fred?
Yes, can you hear?
Yeah, did you wanted to say something? Or should I let others speak?
No, I think all the responses are great. It's just and you're very accurate in what you're saying. You're letting the other person speak. You're hearing other voices. You're opening it up. You're dealing with time. You're dealing with memory. You understand it. Yeah. Go ahead. Anybody else?
Тож, да, всі ваші відповіді абсолютно, якби такі, ви все розумієте, те, що фотографи хотіли показати. Саша?
Yes, I'm really liked the project when the ordinary people get the cameras and documented their everyday life in Iraq during the war, because it's, for me, it shows how important are the ordinary routine and things that happened around us even during the war. And it shows, like you, Fred, showed us the picture of the Earth, our planet, and this simple image can change the perspective of our view on the ordinary things, and we can change our mind about our reality and our world and the things that the work we do together right now is, I realized really thanks to our meeting today, that we do important work, and we just document our everyday life and reflect it to show other, and other projects that you showed us also very useful to take some ideas from that, especially with texts and other things. Thank you.
Та я так думаю, всі зрозуміли, про що Саша казала. Тож проєкт з камерами вона зрозуміла через цей приклад, що те, що ми робимо, і ми тут зустрічаємося, це є дуже важливо документувати звичайне життя. Yeah, go ahead.
So if it's okay with everybody, I'll show you some more projects. Is that
There
okay?
was just one left comment from Ksenia.
Go ahead.
Ksenia, Янко, розуміються.
For me, especially was very interesting project when the photographer made photos of people, and then they had to write something on this project. Like every project you showed was extremely interesting, and I got the ideas, but as for this one, I do something very similar now, and it was really a great way to empower this interaction. So I'll definitely try to rethink this idea and somehow enforce my project also. So thank you so much for this, for showing these works.
Sure. I put on the chat several of the links to some of the things I showed, so you can see them. And the one called thefifthcorner.org is one I made maybe 2 years ago or something, which has a lot of my own writings and talks and books, but also lots of other projects. Some of them I'm talking about today. And if you're interested, you could look there and get more ideas, that we don't talk about today. So I'll go back to sharing the screen, and then we'll talk some more right after that, okay?
Взагалі треба мій переклад, чи ви всі розумієте? Може, я тут зря надриваюсь? I'm just asking whether they actually need translation. Кому треба переклад? Підніміть руку. Ага, Люда, бачу. Підняла. Окей. І Ванеса. Ванеса, я тебе прошу. Лінгвіст. Окей, so I will translate.
This is a project a friend of mine did in Rwanda with orphans from the genocide there. The genocide was 1994-95.
Це був проєкт у Рванді, в Африці, про сиріт, коли там був геноцид 94-95 рік.
And he started to work with children, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, and give them cameras like this.
Він почав працювати фотограф з дітьми і давав їм камери 8-10 років.
And he would give them assignments like what we're talking about, to photograph hope or something they like or don't like. And this is by an 8-year-old girl. This girl on the left, Jacqueline, this is her photograph with her first roll of film.
І це фотографія дівчинки Жаклін. Це була і перша фотографія на першу камеру, взагалі перша фотографія, яку вона коли-небудь зробила. А тема була надія.
And it's a photograph of her friend Gadi.
І це фотографія її друга.
and they entered it in a contest in the United States for best portrait, and she won.
Вона подала і на фотоконкурс на кращий портрет в Америці, і вони виграли.
But then the magazine in the United States asked for Jacqueline's last name in the orphanage, and they didn't know because they don't know who her parents were because of the war.
І потім куратори цього конкурсу запитали прізвище Жаклін, але оскільки вона з сиротинця, то там не знали її прізвище.
And they said, the orphanage said she should not get the prize because it's for adults and she's only 8 years old. And they wrote back and said, she still made the best portrait. She won the first prize.
І люди в притулку сказали, що вона не має отримати приз, тому що це конкурс для дорослих, а вона дитина. А в конкурсі сказали, вона все рівно виграла, тому що вона зробила найкращий портрет.
And this was on the cover of a book published by the United Nations.
І це була на обкладинці книжки, яку опублікувала ООН.
And the other children made pictures like this or like this. And I curated a show at the United Nations 10 years after or 15 years after the genocide in Rwanda, and they used all the children's photographs for the exhibition instead of the pictures of war. And I asked the United Nations why, and they said because the children have hope.
15 років після геноциду я організовувала фотовиставку в ООН, і фотографії, які були вибрані, це були всі фотографії цих дітей, сиріт, а не фотографії з війни. І він запитав їх, чому ви вибрали саме ці фотографії, і йому в ООН відповіли, тому що вони дають надію.
And we sold the photographs for $100 each. To go to high school in Rwanda cost $200 a year. And all 130 children were able to go to high school. You know, there's also other people gave money, but we used the pictures to help them to go to high school.
І ми продавали ці фотографії по $100 за штуку, для того, щоб дітям можна було платити школу. Школа коштує $200 в рік. Таким чином вони зібрали, там багато коштів, і всі 130 дітей змогли піти в школу.
And I'm still working with 3 of the children who are now 30 years old and became professional photographers.
Я досі працюю з 3 із них, з цих дітей, яким вже по 30 років, і вони стали професійними фотографами.
This is a very different idea. It's for a French newspaper, daily newspaper, Libération, on the foreign affairs page. And what he did was make one picture every day from New York, very personal, with text. And they published it every day for 30 days in Paris as an understanding of New York. So it's really a diary. When I asked Henri Cartier-Bresson what photojournalism is, he said it's keeping a journal with a camera, keeping a diary with a camera.
I didn't get the idea of the project. Хто поняв суть проекту, перекладіть на українську.
Okay, it's every day from New York. The photographer Raymond Depardon made one picture.
So it's a French photographer.
Yes.
For a French newspaper.
For Liberation, a French newspaper.
And for how long?
For 30 days. And then, for example, on July 4th, this is on the newspaper, and I translated it on the right. And so this is the way he's reporting from New York. It's very personal. I want to go back to France to let everything go. I forced myself to take a photo. I asked myself, what am I doing here? All is sad, a bad day. So he makes it about New York, but also about himself. It's a photo diary.
This kind of journalism we have never heard of in our reality.
Like I said, Cartier-Bresson told me photojournalism is keeping a journal, keeping a diary with a camera. That's how he defined it.
Okay, so тут ідея, він фотограф робив щодня фотографію в Нью-Йорку для французької газети і писав свої спостереження. І вони були дуже особистими, якби про свої відчуття, що йому самотньо, він хоче все кинути, він хоче Францію. І це, якби, чого він за це згадав, тому що він, коли говорив з Картє-Бресоном, той сказав, що фотожурналістика – це якби ведення щоденника своєю камерою. Те, про що я вам завжди кожен урок кажу.
So I'm showing it to you because that's another way to report on your daily life. One photograph, one text every day. This was Harlem, one of the days. And then the text talks about the people he met, what it felt like. And this was Harlem, New York City, which is usually photographed at that time about violence, about drugs, about police, about crime. But it was a happy picture from Harlem, New York. So this was the 6th of July, 1981. This is the 4th of July, 1981.
І тут це просто як інструмент. Один день, кожен день це одна фотографія і один короткий текст, який описує цей день. Ця фотографія була зроблена в районі Гарлем в Нью-Йорку, який зазвичай асоціюється з вбивствами і насильництвом, а це фотографія 6 липня, це якесь свято в Америці.
This is another one with a small, but this is the way people understood New York. This is Wall Street, a gold mine for photographers. There are no vacations, he writes. So it's a combination of what's there and also his feelings about what's there.
Тобто це комбінація фотографій про те, що відбувається в Нью-Йорку, і його почуття стосовно цього.
In this project, I work on with a Belgian photographer. And what he did was he went and he photographed 1,078 blue skies with Polaroid film over 1,078 World War II concentration camps. And this is what it looks like. So he photographed every World War II concentration camp, but only the blue skies above.
And which year was it when he photographed?
Just the last several years.
So it's a new project, yeah?
Yeah, I had lunch with him yesterday. It's a new project, yeah.
Good to know he's still alive. Це новий проект фотограф, який фотографує небо над всіма концтаборами, які були створені під час Другої світової війни. Він фотографує тільки блакитне небо. І Фред уточнив, що він з ним вчора обідав, так що цей фотограф ще живий. Тож він просто іноді показує старі проекти, того я перепитав.
So this is the map of the World War II concentration camps.
Карта всіх концтаборів Другої світової війни.
And it took him 5.5 years to do this.
Йому зайняло 5,5 років це зробити. Why did it take so long?
Because he went to 1,078 places, and every time you hear a tone, that means somebody else died from 1933 to 45. Every time you hear a tone. And so it starts and it goes for 12 years, from 1933 to 45, the tones. And every time you hear one, that means somebody else died in one of the concentration camps.
Окей, то йому зайняло так довго це відзняти, тому що йому треба було відвідати 1075 таборів.
So he photographed horror by just photographing the blue skies.
Він фотографував жах, тільки якби фотографуючи небо.
Because his feeling was, we've seen the horror, and now he wants us to imagine it.
Тому що його ідея була в тому, що ми побачили вже ці всі жахи, тепер нам треба їх уявити.
So a Swiss magazine published all 1,078 photographs.
І швейцарський журнал опублікував всі 1078 фотографій.
And I wrote the essay for the book. So it's the idea that you don't have to photograph the thing itself. You could just photograph the sky. You could photograph the same tree every day. You don't have to always do the direct photograph. You could do the indirect photograph. And his exhibition now is all over the world. It's traveling in Washington. It's been in London, in Holland. It's traveling all over the world.
Угу. Ідея в тому, що не треба фотографувати часом, не треба фотографувати саму річ, можна фотографувати щось, якусь асоціацію, або не пряму, якби не напряму казати. І ця серія зараз подорожує світом, і небагато виставок.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you 2 or 3 more projects to finish. One idea is that photography usually reacts, but this is something I think is really important. In Africa, Western governments and NGOs did not want to give money to help people who are HIV positive because they thought they wouldn't take the medicine. So a friend of mine photographed for 4 years people who did take the medicine. And this is the same woman 4 years later, taking the medicine. She was healthy, her children, she was working. And the United Nations told me that 8 million people are alive today because, in large part, because of these photographs, because they convinced the Western governments to give money to pay for the medicines so that people would get better. So 8 million people are alive because of this guy's pictures in part.
Цей фотограф чи фотографка, я не встигла побачити, як звати, він... Is it he or she? I'm sorry, I missed the name.
Gideon Mendel, he.
Окей. Цей фотограф, він хотів, просив у Західній Африці отримати фінансування від керівництва, щоб знімати людей, які є ВІЧ-позитивними. Держава не хотіла їм давати гроші, тому що вона не вірила, що це може якось впливати на те, щоб вони почали приймати ліки. І він все рівно якось зняв, чи переконав їх, чи почав знімати, і потім отримав фінансування. Коротше, він зняв цю жінку, яка була хвора, і потім зняв фотографії про те, що з нею сталося після того, як вона прийняла ліки, і вона, от, бачите, з дітьми, почувається добре, добре виглядає. І таким чином це переконало, ООН йому сказало про те, що ці фотографії переконали 8 мільйонів людей, зберегло 8 мільйонів життів, які все-таки прийняли ліки. Завдяки цим фото.
Okay, I'm going to go quick. This is another project I worked on to end polio. Right now, there's almost nobody in the world getting polio, the disease polio, the paralysis anymore. I worked with Salgado. And these were the kind of happier pictures which were used to get people to get vaccinated. And it was a very successful project. There's almost zero, there's about maybe 100 people in the world still getting sick from polio. So this is a project that we did, and it's not about, violence or sadness, it's about getting better.
Це проєкт Сальвадора Масальгадо, дуже відомий фотограф, про зупинити поліомієліт. Вже майже ніхто в світі не хворіє поліомієлітом, це такий параліч. Яка ці фотографії відносно щасливі, які заохочують людей отримати вакцину.
Okay, and this is the last thing I show you. I worked on a project for the Millennium Development Goals for the United Nations. And the idea was that all young people will have the right to a good education, to healthcare, to clean water, a good environment, and so on. It's called Chasing the Dream.
I was making notes and I missed it.
Okay, well, I'll go back. But a big part of it was giving young people around the world cameras to make pictures of what they like and what they don't like. So this was the lead photograph, the #1 photograph at the United Nations in New York. And it was done by a young person. And the caption is, "I like my brothers." They were asked to photograph what they like or what they do not like in 8 different regions. In Uganda, in India, in Jamaica, in Brazil, in different countries. What do you like and not like? This was in the United Nations. This is, I like my mother when she makes lunch. Or I like my sisters in Morocco. Or I like the basketball court in the refugee camp in Uganda. I like my neighbor. I like my brother, but he's too protective of his sisters.
Ось це проєкт, який теж був показаний ООН, чи спонсорований ООН. Були задіяні 8 регіонів по всьому світу: Африка, Індія, Бразилія, Ямайка і ще інші, де людям теж з звичайним пересічним були дані камери, і їхнє завдання було сфотографувати те, що їм подобається і не подобається. Я так бачу переважно те, що їм подобалося. І ця фотографія була основною, там, де 2 хлопчики.
So this exhibition was at New York, United Nations. A picture of a hammer in Brazil because he hopes to be able to work. This is Uganda, Brazil. I like Imad standing. And interestingly, the project, the Millennium Development Goals, which went on for 15 years, because of it, 21 million people are alive today who would not have been alive today. And when we did the exhibition, this is in Ukraine. I like alternative youth. I like Aziz Hisham studying by Lubna, who's 11 years old.
And thanks to this project, what happened?
21 million people are alive today who would not have been alive, thanks to the Millennium Development Goals. The project was part of it. This is also from Odessa. So, okay, I'm going to stop sharing again. So what I'm getting at is these are photographs just like your photographs, but by people around the world. We use them in the United Nations to raise money to help young people. And the argument is that 21 million people are alive today who would not be alive because, not just because of the photo show, but because of the entire project. We were just a small part of it. But I'm getting at the idea that photographs can be helpful in the world.
Ну і цей проєкт, він, по-моєму, існував 15 років і допоміг 21 мільйону людей залишитись живих. Я також розуміла через фінансування. Завдяки цим цілі сталого розвитку, чи це цілі ООН, якось вони там називаються. І, звичайно, це, ну, якби фотовиставка, це була лише маленька частинка цього проєкту, але вона, якби, документує і показує, що фотографія може робити багато хороших речей. До цього він, якби, він, як заохочує нас, розкажучи ці історії.
Okay, and the very last thing I'm going to show you is just a few pictures from the exhibition we did now in New York and Brooklyn about Ukraine.
Я зараз покажу останні ці дві фотографії з виставки, які ми зробили буквально недавно про Україну в Брукліні.
Which is mostly by Ukrainian photographers and video, people make video and painters drawing.
Більшість українських фотографів і відеографів і людей, які малюнки робили. Curated by Іра Лупу. Куратором була Іра Лупа, моя хороша знайома. З Одеси. І Фред. Куди ж без нього?
So this is just some of the pictures by different photographers, artists from Ukraine in the exhibition we have right now.
Ця фотовиставка досі триває.
And the works on the left, they're almost all Ukrainian artists. On the right, they're books. But we also put books of the Soviet invasion of Prague, 1968, of Hungary, 1956, of Chechnya by different photographers as well. This is the gallery. This is a photograph by Sylvia Plahi, whose mother's from Ukraine. She had to leave Hungary when she was 12 years old because of the Soviet invasion of Hungary in 1956. So that's a picture she made. This is by Chiara Negrello, of a Ukrainian woman working in Italy. This is Elena Subach about Ukrainian grandmothers. Justina Milnikievich, who did a big project, a book and an audiovisual on many years of work in Ukraine. This is Maxim Dondiuk.
Я думаю, тут перекладати не треба, правда? Я думаю, більшість фотографів ви все рівно знаєте. Українські.
And this is Volodymyr
Benedchuk,
which is a natural life in Ukraine. This is Ira Lupu, the webcam girls, from On Dreams and Screens.
But this exhibition is fundraising, so they are selling these pictures.
Yeah, we sold this picture we sold this week for $300 to go to Ukraine directly. all the
Ага.
money goes to Ukraine.
І фотографії ці продаються, і всі гроші йдуть напряму Україні. Цю фотографію продали на цьому тижні за $300. Іра громадська.
So these images are in the gallery and we sell them. It's all fundraising. All the money goes to Ukraine.
Да, і повторюю, що всі фотографії це якби збирають кошти для України. Do you know how many have sold? Like how many percent is sold?
The first night we had 300 people at the opening and we raised $1,500 that night, just contributions and buying books. And then I don't know how many have sold so far, but we keep selling.
Мгм.
So actually, Yernev, who is my student, who did a book on Odessa.
За
And
першу
then-
ніч відкриття зібрали $1500 просто за пожертвування і за продаж книжок. А скільки за продаж фотографій ще невідомо, тому що вони продовжують продаватися.
And then at the bottom you could donate, and then there's a whole list of places to donate to. And this is all connected to our exhibition. So we're doing it, both to show Ukraine, but the big deal for Ira, my co-curator, was not to show Ukraine just in terms of violence, but to show the culture, the people, the history, the love, the hope, the possibility, the land, the nature, all these things, because everybody else is showing the violence and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to show more of, just the country as a country and the people.
Тому ціль цієї виставки було показати не тільки фотографії війни і жорстокості, але і природу, і людей, і культуру, все інші речі, які характеризують Україну.
And there are also many videos, there's some painting, some drawing, and so on in it. And we did the entire thing in 12 days, we made the exhibition.
Там ще й малюнки, і відео, і звук, вони все організували за 12 днів. Виставка відкрилась десь 13 березня.
So I hope I gave you some ideas.
Надіюсь, я вам дав трошки ідей. I have a question. I have
Go ahead.
many. First of all, so you say we didn't want to show the pictures of violence, and but there are still pictures of violence being made, and
There is some in the exhibition, but
Yeah.
it's not dominated by it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was not the purpose of those pictures, but now there are many pictures. Well, there are many more photographers, foreign ones, mostly in Ukraine. Some of them are local ones as well. What do you see? What is the purpose of those pictures that are currently being made in Ukraine, the ones that you see? Яка ціль фотографій, воєнних фотографій, переважно закордонних, які зараз в Україні, і місцевих, яка ціль їхніх фотографій, які зараз продукуються в Україні з того, що бачив Фред? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
In the exhibition, we have some photographs by Domdiuk of the first week of the war. We have a bulletin board. We put up newspaper pictures, magazine pictures, every day of what's going on, or we try to. I think, one has to document the violence, and it's very important to do so. But I think the danger is that it becomes repetitive. When you think of Ukraine, you just think of violence, or any country. I live in the Bronx in New York. Some people don't want to visit me because when they hear the word Bronx, they think it's violent. It's a stereotype. So what you also have to do is just show people as people. They're not just defined by the violence, by whatever stereotype. So I think that the work that you guys are producing is also very important, because it shows sadness, and it shows thoughtfulness, and it shows nightmares and dreams, and it's not just violence, 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 which becomes repetitive, and people stop feeling and stop seeing it on the outside.
Проблема з фотографіями жорстокості, тому що вони стають дуже вони повторюються, люди перестають їх сприймати і реагувати на них. Тому важливо показувати людей як людей і інші речі також, те, що ви показуєте, різні відчуття, і сум, і страх, і мрії, і кошмари. Тому що, да, воєнна фотографія, вона просто з часом перестає діяти. Вона важлива, щоб вона була, але важливо, щоб була не тільки вона, інакше тоді Україна буде асоціюватись тільки з ненавистю, тому що він живе в районі, який називається Бронкс, і це люди не хочуть до нього приходити в гості, тому що кажуть, що це небезпечний район, тому що все, що вони бачили про Бронкс, це насилля.
So it's what I showed you. The children in Rwanda are just like children everywhere. They're not defined by the genocide. The children or people in Iraq are just people, because we tend to just see in a certain way. So yes, the pictures of violence are very important, but so are the pictures of people in Ukraine, outside Ukraine. What is it like to be in Germany? What is it like to not be able to go home? What is it like to not know what the future is? All these things are also very, very important. And sometimes they affect viewers even more than the pictures of the violence.
І так, він багато чого сказав, що ті фотографії, які ми бачили про людей в Іраці, в Руанді, там просто зображені люди, ну, такі самі, як і ми, які не, ну, їх, типу, їхнє зображення не характеризується зображенням війни. І те, що ви знімаєте, це різні почуття про те, що таке бути в Німеччині, що таке не могти повернутися додому, або боятись вийти з дому, або там, не знаю, бути під час тривоги, це теж важливі, а часом і ще важливіші кадри, ніж кадри з війни, з активних бойових дій.
So on Monday, I'm meeting with somebody about the idea to put posters in many cities around the world of photographs from Ukraine, but they don't have to be violence. They could be hope. They could be love. They could be anything. They could be weddings. It doesn't have to always be the same kind of picture over and over again in order for people to have empathy and care.
All wedding photographers just had a little moment. Він каже, завтра в понеділок в нього зустріч з людиною, якою вони хочуть роздрукувати постери про Україну, розвісити їх по всьому світу. І там будуть, ну, різні моменти, там може бути весілля і щось таке звичайне. Я кажу, що всі весільні фотографи на секундочку проснулись. Це їхній шанс. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, one thing, you know, when I was young, we had the Vietnam War, and all the pictures of violence and violence and violence we got used to. But one week, Life magazine ran the photographs, which I can show you, of just the soldiers who were killed that week, just like identity photographs. And it was considered the most anti-war issue they ever published. It wasn't the violence. It was just the regular people. That's what affected people.
Yeah, we did the same when I worked at Kyiv Post. We did the same thing with the MH17. You remember the aircraft that was bombed? Yeah. So we did the same with all the passengers, and my task was to find their pictures, 300 passengers, and their last social media posts, and what their relatives said about it. It was very exhausting. То він розказує, що в його молодості була В'єтнамська війна, і вони теж дуже звикли до цих картинок війни постійно. І одного разу журнал Life зробив такий розворот з фотографіями. Was it the pictures of all American soldiers or Vietnam soldiers?
I'm going to share the screen. I'll show you.
Він покаже екран. Показали звичайні фотографії, не військові. І сказали, що це була найбільш антивоєнна фотографія чи акція на той момент.
This is the posters in the street that people do now. If people don't read newspapers, like this is the photograph by Iman. She's a student of mine from Egypt about women harassed. And this is in Norway. They just put the poster up in a skateboard park. or posters like this or this. And, you know, I'm talking to them Monday to see if they want to do stuff, pictures from Ukraine. And this is the Life magazine. In 1969, they just photographed the American soldiers who died that week. And this was considered the most important issue ever they did on the Vietnam War. These were the men who died that week. And it was considered to be the first time they were against the war. It wasn't just the violence. It was just the people, their name, their age, where they're from. And this was very, very, very powerful at the time.
Це були фотографії всіх американських військових, які загинули за той тиждень у В'єтнамській війні, які надрукували в журналі Life, і це вважався найважливішим випуском цього журналу вообще за всю історію В'єтнамської війни. І вона раптом журнал став антивоєнним. So being anti-war at that time was not cool, right?
When they showed the violence, it didn't make people anti-war, but when they showed the, you know, the pictures I just showed you, that affected people much more at that time. So both are important. Both are important.
Коли люди дивились на фото жорстокості, вони не були так проти війни, ніж коли вони побачили фотографії жертв. Окей. В кого є питання? I'm asking if they have any questions or comments. Питання чи коментарі?
I showed you a lot of things because we're just meeting this time. It's probably too many things, but my idea is just to take whatever is helpful to you. If there is anything helpful to you, and then make it your own and do whatever you want to do. And then think about how your pictures can have an impact in the world if you want to.
I have a question.
Я перекладу тільки, я показую вам всі ці речі, може забагато, щоб ви взяли хоча б якусь з цих ідей для себе, і ви зрозуміли, що фотографії мають вплив в цьому світі.
Is it okay to take some of the methods and use it like the same? Or should we like change it a bit to continue? Because is it not a copy? Is it okay to copy the methods?
If you take the interactive portraits I showed, you could do whatever you want. I thought of it, you could do anything you want with it, that's no problem. If you do exactly like Jim Goldberg did Rich and Poor, you know, you wouldn't do the same thing anyway. It wouldn't be Rich and Poor, you would do something else. I don't see any big problems, you know, taking some of the ideas and doing it. We all get ideas from each other. It's okay. If you want to do diptychs, triptychs, whatever you do, with many people have done them in many ways. I'm just showing you some of the ideas that are there, but you know, I don't see a problem.
Yeah, I've seen so many projects with cameras being given to locals, even by photographers from my school, that they did it in Nepal. So it's not like it's copyrighted method.
I'm asking because sometimes photographers think they should invent new methods, like that they cannot like do the same.
No, to me, I don't really care about photography. I care about the world. And if what you're doing can make the world a better place, just do it. You know, whether it's your personal world, your family's world, your friend's world, the big world, the Ukraine world, any world. Do it. I don't see problems. I think I'm always happy when people take my ideas and do things with them, because that's what they're for. So I think in what we're talking about, you know, I think if you can do stuff that's worth, you know, that does something good, just do it. And then you'll come up with your own little variations and your own little ideas. I mean, we all do portraits. You can't say that I'm not going to do a portrait because somebody else did a portrait. We all do portraits, you know, things like that. But in looking at the pictures that Ira sent me, you know, I saw a lot of pictures. I didn't see too much text. I didn't see any sound. You know, there's other ways you could work as well. You could use sound, you could use music. You could, you know, record the nighttime. You could record just sounds in the street. You could, you know, in the digital world, you can use different media together. It's hard to do it on paper, to put music on paper, to put sound on paper, but in digital you can do it. You can do it many different ways.
Да, Фред каже, що зараз в цифровому світі можна дуже багато що робити, не обмежувати себе фотографією, можна записувати звуки, музику, відео і да, пробувати багато різних речей. А питання Юлії, думаю, зрозуміло. Вона питала, чи можна копіювати методи, Фред сказав, можна. Якщо це допомагає світу, значить можна. І взагалі, яка різниця? Я раджу книжку прочитати «Кради як художник». I'm recommending the book Steal Like an Artist. It gives a lot of insight of how artists are actually always stealing from each other. It's like a normal thing. Just a matter of who's going to do it faster.
And different, yeah. And different.
Thank you.
You know, yeah, I think also, you know, outside person going to Ukraine is going to see it very different than you will. And I think your voices are really important from the inside. You know, whether you're still in Ukraine or you're somewhere else, your voices are really important because an outside person does not know what you know. And it's good that you express what you know.
Важливо те, що ви в Україні або не в Україні, але все рівно показуєте життя зсередини, тому що ну, хтось теж має почути ці голоси. І, коротше, те, що ви робите, це важливо.
I mean, you know, Chiara's piece in our exhibition is about Ukrainian women working in Italy and Florence and what it feels like to be far from Ukraine and you know, and be connected and disconnected and how painful that is. There's so much work to be done, you know, in so many different ways. And so many people now want to understand it better and publish it and do things with it and see it, you know. So I would just encourage people to, you know, do whatever you want. Some of the ideas I showed you, come up with your own ideas, and also think in different media, not always just the photograph, although you can do that.
Фред сказав цікаву думку, що зараз багато людей, особливо друкованих видань, вони зацікавлені в тому, щоб публікувати різні історії про Україну, не тільки з передової, щоб краще зрозуміти людей, їхні почуття і взагалі культуру, історію. Якщо ви думаєте, що всі в світі знають все про Україну, то це точно не так. І там ще була одна думка, я забула. I lost the second thought.
To me, one of the key words I use is authenticity, meaning it's authentic. It comes from you. It's not a copy of, but it's your own idea, your own feeling, and people respond to that.
Важливо, щоб ваші фотографії були автентичними. Це ваші ідеї, ваші почуття, і люди завжди на це реагують. Ей, чого ви всі повиключали відео? Why are they turning cameras? Are they crying? I wanted to ask you, now we are seeing that people get the fatigue from Ukraine news. It's been 2 months and it's the attention, it gets less and less. So what do you think Ukrainian photographers could do to keep that attention, or is it not possible at all?
I think it's very possible, but you know, I work with many publications and museums and curators and different things. And if you guys did something that's interesting, let's say on Hope or whatever, I'd be happy to show it to other places. I'll put it in my lectures, do things, and it affects people. I do that all the time. You know, it's, so I think there are other ways of doing it, ways of figuring it out, you know, that are much more personal and not so much just the normal, what newspapers and magazines do. You know, what is it like to be you guys right now? What does it feel like to be you guys?
Коротше, каже, якщо ви зробите щось класне, він це комусь покаже.
If everybody photographed, what is the future in one photograph? What would it look like? You know, that could be an extraordinary project that people can see. You know,
каже, якщо будете знімати щось на тему надії чи майбутнього. But I hear that actually now from multiple sources, so art directors and galleries, they are asking, or newspapers are asking for hopeful pictures from Ukraine. But what if we theoretically don't feel hopeful? What if we just feel depressed and sad all the time? How can we produce hopeful pictures?
But I think that's important. Like if you photograph one picture of what you think of the future, that could be very powerful. And if it's depressed, it's depressed. It's the life is the life. You're not going to pretend it's something else. Whatever you guys feel, you know, it's important because, you know, one thing about wars and a lot of things is once it's over, it's like it never existed. It's in history, but everybody lives with it every day of the rest of their lives. You know, it's always there. It happened. It changes life for people. It changes my life. Every day I think about Ukraine a lot. It changed my life, and my life after is changed. And I think that's important to recognize for lots of reasons, including reasons of trauma. You know, you have to deal with it. You have to understand what happened. You have to kind of try to figure it out and be able to understand and continue and move on and do important things and learn from it to make the world, if possible, better, whether it's just for you or your family or friends or a bigger world or whatever you can do. You know, those things are really, really important. And, you know, I know like Taco, my student from Georgia, did a big video piece on the Russians taking over Georgia, you know, the frontier, and it's being shown all over the place. I can send you the link for it. And it's an important piece, and she was a student. I mean, many, many people doing things. You know, Eniac Martinez, who was my student from Mexico, and 3 of his brothers-in-law were disappeared and presumably killed in Mexico. He made an amazing video piece about that, what it feels like in Mexico, the violence, how it affects him, his children, and so on. So it's unfortunately many places in the world, people have to deal with trauma and violence and horror, and then try to make sense of it and move on and share it. And if it's helpful to share it, you know, sometimes that's helpful to heal too. These are all issues. You're not, I mean, you know, the reason I wanted to do this show on the Ukraine in Brooklyn, New York, with ERA, with a budget of exactly 0, that was our entire budget, was 0. And we did it. And in a snowstorm, and a friend brought 4 bottles of Ukrainian vodka because we could only have Ukrainian vodka in the snowstorm. 300 people came, and it affected a lot of people's lives, and it's there for 2 months. 3 months, and now it's going, like I said, Slovenia, Netherlands, and elsewhere. You know, it's important. It's important. You should not be forced to feel one thing or another. You feel what you feel. You are who you are. And I'm happy to come back and look at more work in the future if you want me to at some point. And, you know, and if that's helpful at all, or if not, whatever you want.
I'm gonna try to translate what you said. Він сказав дуже цікаву думку, що коли війна минає, її ніби ніколи і не було. Це типу так зразу стає якоюсь книжкою з історії, але люди з цим живуть до кінця їхнього життя. І вона змінює їх, і він теж змінюється від цього війни в Україні. Він думає про це щодня. І важливо ділитися, ну, фіксувати, можливо, для роботи з травмою, тому що, можливо, якщо ви будете цим ділитися, і інші люди будуть це бачити, вони будуть почувати, якби це моя інтерпретація, вони будуть почувати себе не такими самотніми, і це буде допомагати нам швидше оговтатись від цієї травми і жити далі. І не потрібно себе змушувати відчувати щось, якщо ви не відчуваєте надію, на що вам фотографувати надію, фотографуйте те, що ви відчуваєте. І ця виставка, яка зараз проходить в Нью-Йорку, яка вже йде 2 місяці і поїде далі в Словенію і в інші країни, ну, вона важлива і вона щось змінює, тому що вони збирають кошти і розказують про Україну, і це напряму впливає на те, що відбувається в Україні. Тому це важливо. І якщо ви хочете, він залюбки пройде через місяць чи через коли там скільки часу пройде, щоб подивитися на ваші нові роботи і як, що змінилось, і на ваш прогрес, якщо ви хочете. They say yes, they are not nodding and saying yes, please come back and look at our work.
Okay.
There was a question in the chat. Oh, no,
The
no
chat,
question.
Eniac Martinez from Mexico, the video is very powerful. And also Taco, my student, they were both my student, Creeping Borders from Taco Rubakitse from Georgia, about the Russians taking over part of Georgia, and they're using it, the activists, you know, to keep the land against Russia too. It's a similar situation. Those two videos, I think, are both very powerful, and they're both by students.
Мгм. І ці всі проекти, це проекти студентів, таких як ви, тобто це не якісь там професійні фотографи з пуліцерами, які отримали бюджет від ООН. Ну, якби це всі більшість проєктів, які ви бачите, це були проекти, створені в межах якихось шкіл. And I wanted you to come and talk today because I grew up with looking at, you know, famous photographers and Salgado as well, thinking that you can do something, you can make a change only when you photograph pictures of, when you make pictures of poor children somewhere in Africa, and only those pictures matter. And what I photograph in my bedroom or in my yard, it's not really saving the world. So I think your perspective is really, really important because you've seen lots of different kinds of photography and how it
I
can
curated
change.
Salgado's first exhibition in the world, and I've worked with him a lot. But I think your photographs of your bedroom and your house and the tree and everything is really important. All these things are important. The world of photography changed, and the 20th century photography is not the same as 21st century photography. It's very different in many ways.
Всім, я не знаю, треба перекладати чи ні, але він був першим, взагалі зробив першу виставку Сальвадора Сальгадо. Якщо ви не знаєте, хто це, подивіться, один з найважливіших фотографів в світі. Я раніше, я на цій фотографії виросла, і я вважала, що важлива фотографія – це тільки та, коли ти там фотографуєш бідні села в Африці, то тільки ця фотографія щось може міняти. Коли ти фотографуєш в себе в ванні чи в Калідолі, чи на балконі, то це не вносить якусь там лепту в світовий порядок. Але, це, я думаю, ви вже всі зрозуміли, що це не так. Я хочу, щоб ви ще мали можливість задати якісь питання, чи дати коментарі, бо така можливість буває не часто. I just want them to ask or comment because this opportunity doesn't come every day. Володя?
Well, yes, I just wanted to say that, maybe right now I really don't have any questions, but the information that you are giving to us and your comments on our work and on those projects that you showed us, it is really important and it is really interesting, and it is something to think about it. And maybe after some time there will be questions, and it would be really, I hope that after some time we will really see you again here in the call to
Look, I appreciate it. I'm happy to come back. If you guys as a group want to do a project that you think should be shown to a bigger world, I'm happy to help be a bridge to try to get it to a bigger world, if, for example. You want to
Якщо ви хочете зробити проєкт на весь світ, то можете мені про це сказати, я спробую вас з'єднати з ким. I think we need a month or two to nail our projects. Що тут пише? Can you please share any educational opportunities for Ukrainian photographers? How is it possible to join the online gallery which collects money for Ukraine? How can we contact you? That was the question in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put the address of the gallery which is having the show into the chat. In 1 second.
А поки Фред пише, якщо у вас є конкретні питання по вашому проєкту, якщо ви не знаєте, як далі фотографувати, бо ви хочете, щоб він конкретно вам сказав, типу, що добре, що ні, то я думаю, така можливість є зараз.
So I put the gallery in New York that has the exhibition. The owner, you know, the two owners are friends of mine. One is a sculptor from Hungary who lives in Brooklyn, and his wife who's an artist who makes books. And together it's their gallery, and the show ends in about 10 days there. But that's it. In terms of educational opportunities, you know, I've been working with one school online, and we do workshops and so on. And I don't know, Ira, what the best way to do is that people should tell you they're interested, and then you send me a list, or you know what you think is best. You know, there's an enormous number of schools and workshops and things like that. For me, recently, it's been very interesting working online because you could work with people around the world. The last one I did, there were 12 students, and one was from Congo, and two Algeria, and one Rwanda, and so on and so forth. So, you know, people were from everywhere. But
yeah, I think right now the whole world is open to Ukrainians. So only if you just Google a little bit, you can find so many things. They actually get targeted at me in Instagram. I get so many open calls and competitions and free courses just for Ukrainians because I'm on Instagram. Зараз стільки можливостей є для навчання для українців. Просто якщо ви трошки погуглите або пошукаєте в Інстаграмі, на мене таргетуються всі конкурси, всі можливі резиденції і все, що тільки можна для українців в Інстаграмі. Мені навіть шукати нічого не треба. Тому, да, напишіть конкретно, що вас цікавить. Ну, в Америку дуже складно поїхати навчатися. Європа легше, і Європа зараз багато що пропонує. Тому, можливо, я складу для вас якийсь список можливостей для навчання. Maybe I'll make a list for them for Europe, because America is a little bit too far. Too hard to move to right now.
America has online. I was teaching a course this year in New York, but it was all online. The students were in Bangladesh, India, all over the world.
Yeah.
So I put my email address there if anybody needs to reach me as well in the interim.
Yeah, Ksenia had a question.
Go ahead. Any questions?
Sorry, my microphone. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about my project. Now I live in Berlin, and I photograph people in Berlin. I come to their houses. We talk about important things that make their apartment real home for them, like presents from loved one, favorite cups, books, clothes, stuff like this, and then we pack together bug-out bag. Yeah, this is a very special thing for Ukrainians in such situation. It's the bag we, when I was in Ukraine, we bared with ourselves in the office, on shops, and then I moved also with the bug-out bag. So it's this like the project about giving experience to European people, given experience of being refugee, and this is a concept. But actually, I never did any like conceptual projects before, and I have some doubts if I do stuff like design, text, the size of the series correctly, and I totally don't know what to do, how to present this project in moment, and what to do with it when it will be finished.
Okay, what I would suggest for anybody doing a project like that is do like 8 or 12 pages of it on a layout, the way you see it, just to start and see what it feels like. it's always better to start designing it yourself. You don't have to be the final designer, but at least begin it and see what it feels like. And then share it with other people, see what they think, and then begin. But it's not just the photography, it's the design, the way you use text, the size of it, all that. Just use your intuition. Whatever feels right, try it and see what it looks like, and keep trying it. And that's the best way to start. If you, it should come from you first.
And how to present it? Maybe you can advise some platforms. What would be the next steps? I don't know, searching for some opportunities for exposition, or making sites.
Well, there are many. You know, I started with former students, Photodemic, which I showed you just now, the Ukraine show. I'll put that online, and they've published several hundred people's work, and that's one good place. You know, lots of people see it. You know, there are many ways of doing it, but once you have a better idea, should it be a book? Should it be a PDF? Should it be a multimedia piece with sound? All those things, then you begin to have a better sense of you know, where it could go and what you could do with it. And just get different people's advice, but try it yourself and see what it feels like.
Yeah, and it kind of already looks like a magazine or an article, because it's a picture with a text. So it does feel like an article already. So maybe you think of magazines that would like to publish this story, because you already have the story and the pictures to it. Якщо історія вже виглядає як для журналу, тому що там фотографії і опис, або там є якийсь герой і його думки, то є сенс якби думати про контакти з журналами. Якщо у вас малюнки, то може це галерея, чи якісь постери, чи інші варіанти. Володя, ти хочеш щось спитати, чи ти просто руку держиш? Окей, Володя has one more question.
Fred, I was thinking about what I can photograph in my ordinary life, and then I become interested. What association do you have with Ukraine outside of war? So can I ask you to name simply 3 or 4, well, several things that associates Ukraine, that you associate with Ukraine, but outside the war. And then I think it would be interesting for me to set a task for me to try to photograph those associations.
There's an echo, so I didn't hear well.
So the question was, which 3 things do you associate with Ukraine outside of war?
Which things do I associate with Ukraine outside of war?
Yeah, the first things that come to your mind.
Many things, but what interests me a lot is what is it to be 16 years old in Ukraine right now, for example. I'm very, very interested. What is it to be a high school student in Ukraine right now?
And why high school student?
Because it's on the middle between you being in the family and you're going in the world.
Фред каже, що те, що його цікавить, це як це бути 16-річним в Україні. And if you were to name 3 things, just like words or objects, what would that be?
About Ukraine?
Yeah.
I mean, culture in terms of, you know, both the sense of history, a sense of literature, a sense of painting, you know, a sense of seeing the world differently, really. And one of the problems in the world is that we don't pay attention to each other often until there's a war. We don't know very much about it, you know, in that sense. So I think in many ways, you know, when I looked at Vladimir's photographs of nature in Ukraine that we do in the exhibition, I'm fascinated by, you know, the mountains, the forest, the water. What does it look like? What does it feel like, for example? You know, there's many I don't know how to define it in just 1, 2, 3 things, but when also a sense of the tradition and modernity, the kind of sense of keeping history, keeping tradition, and also moving forward in so many ways interests me too. I'm also interested in sports, interested in lots of things in terms of Ukraine. It's not just one.
Yeah, but I
one
don't
thing or
think
another.
you're right that people don't really have many visual associations outside of revolutions or wars, because that's what makes the headlines.
Yeah, Fred, but well, I can already thank you because you already gave me an idea of what to photograph, and well, I think it is how does it feels to be in Ukraine outside of a war, and in all of this.
Подумайте
Сенсу.
навіть просто самі, які у вас асоціації з Україною, які у вас перші 3 слова спадають на розум, і спробуйте їх показати. Оксана?
I want to ask about your advice. Maybe you know how to make photo of strangers on the street, because sometimes I'm scared that people cannot understand me. Maybe you can advise something.
One thing with my students, if you try the interactive portraits, you go up to somebody, you say, I want to make your portrait, but I want to show it to you and see what you think of it. Then they're involved in it. And try that 3, 4, 5 times and see what it feels like that way. In other words, you're not stealing a portrait, you're not taking a portrait, you're collaborating to make a portrait. You're engaging the person. And you just say, hey, I want to make your portrait and show it to you and ask you what it feels like. And almost always with my students, they're very comfortable doing that. Many of them also, or some of them are also scared and timid or shy about it, but it generally works out to do it. And it's amazing. Like I have a student of mine from Iran photographed a homeless guy in New York City, and he kept talking and talking about, the way he looks, and he doesn't feel so good about the way he looks. He can't take a shower. He doesn't have a home, but he's not really like that. But normally the guy might have been somebody she wouldn't have approached, but by talking to him, he was really happy to be part of the conversation. So that's one way to begin, and then see if you want to keep doing it that way or not that way. Just don't have the feeling you're stealing something. Once you start thinking you're stealing or taking, then people get shy or timid. If it's a collaboration and engagement, it's like having a conversation with somebody. You want to talk about stuff, it's like making a picture of them. In English, I don't use the word taking a photograph because you're taking. I use making a photograph. You're making something.
Оксана запитала, як фотографувати незнайомців, і Фред сказав, що їх треба просто залучити, не намагатися щось вкрасти, не забрати у них фотографії, а зробити її разом з ними. І від себе скажу пояснити, для чого ви це робите, і нормально сприймати, якщо вам відмовлять. Мені не раз відмовляли, а я з ними поговорила 5 минут, і вони вже передумали, так що не бійтесь нічого. Ви ж нічого не робите протизаконного, значить не треба боятися. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Or do you have to go now?
No, I just want to give you one more idea.
Окей, хочу ще одну ідейку підкину.
Many times professional photographers, if they work for a magazine or a newspaper, are expected to photograph a certain way.
Дуже часто фотографи з журналів і газет, від них очікують, що вони будуть фотографувати певним чином.
But if you're not that person, you have a lot of freedom to do anything you want. And that's an advantage, an enormous advantage.
Якщо ви не являєтесь таким фотографом, то ви можете фотографувати будь-як, як вам захочеться. І це величезна перевага. І дає вам багато свободи.
And so much of the best work, the most surprising, interesting, important work comes from people who are not working as professionals at the time because they could see things differently, more intimately, more personally. There's no expectation. So what I'm saying is you guys have a big opportunity to have a big voice to say important things.
Тому дуже часто фотографії такі найзначущі, це вони не йдуть від професійних фотографів або люди, які працюють професійним фотографом в той момент, тому що вони можуть бачити речі під іншим кутом і по-іншому їх показувати. Тому для вас це зараз дуже велика можливість, і ви маєте великий голос, так сказав Фред.
I have something to say. I just want to say that I like your way of seeing the things, like your vision that about the peace photography to make the better world. And for example, I did some series on quarantine, and I thought it was like sad one, but when I showed it to people, they said it's like more hopeful, and I thought, yeah, I think like we need to find something better, some way to live through this crazy things.
I agree. Because, there's almost no prizes for peace photography, but there are many for war photography. But I much prefer peace over war. It's much better to have peace than war. And so I think people who can show us, the nonviolence, the good things happening, the important things, constructive things happening in all kinds of different ways, even just the beauty of the landscape. That you live in a beautiful country. There's so many things to do that, it's, I'll tell you a Cartier-Bresson story. In 1935, I think, he was going to be the only photographer to photograph the King of England becoming king inside. They put the crown on his head and he'd be the king, and he'd be the only photographer. It was a scoop, the only guy. And he said, no, I'm not doing that. It's boring. He said, I'm going to go outside where the poor people are who cannot go inside. They don't have the tickets, they don't have the money, and I'm going to photograph the poor people. And those are some of his most important photographs he ever made. And he did that for about $5 instead of probably $1,000. But it's by looking the other way, not where you're supposed to look the other way. And that's often where the important things are happening.
Приводить приклад, коли Cartier-Bresson запропонували пофотографувати коронацію короля Англії, і він був би єдиним фотографом і отримав ексклюзив на сфотографувати цей момент, коли йому покладуть корону на голову. Він відмовився і сказав, що це дуже скучно. Я краще буду фотографувати бідних людей на вулиці в цей момент. І він заробив за це, може, $5 замість того, щоб заробити якісь класні гонорари. Але це одні з найважливіших його кадрів, які він коли-небудь зробив. І суть в тому, що часто треба дивитися не туди, куди тобі кажуть, чи коли слід дивитися, а десь в іншу сторону. Навпаки, тому що там можуть відбуватися куди важливіші речі.
Yeah, and this is here, I'll just share one more time. So this is the website, this is mine. So this is New Strategies, 4 Corners. This is what I'm talking about now, Cartier-Bresson. So these are the photographs that he made outside when the king was becoming the king, which are some of his most important pictures that he ever made. So I have a whole thing here on interactive portraits, all kinds of different ways of doing things differently, peace photography.
Тут на своєму сайті розказує про всі ці стратегії, і також історію з Картє-Бресоном, як можна по-іншому розказувати про події.
You know, and here are, you know, different books I've written and you know, all kinds of these things, and these are talks, you know, different talks I've given, you know, in different countries on different things. All of this is just for anybody to look at who's interested. So some of the stuff that we've been talking about, you know, you could find here. This is my most recent essay, which is about synthetic imagery. You know, this is by artificial intelligence. This is not a photograph. This is by algorithms. You know, it's also in German. You know, there's a lot of different stuff if you're interested. This is a former student of mine from Chile who's using a kind of interactive portraits. Here, these are people who've been shot by the security forces, shot in the eyes. They were just protesting for the economy. It wasn't, but the security forces shot them in the eye. And then he uses interactive portraits and he's asking them, you know, what does it feel like? This is your portrait. And then
Mira el espejo y
and then he uses the interactive portrait for the person to respond to their portrait. Because in these cases, they've all been shot by the police in the eyes. You know, what does it feel like for these different people? So he's using interactive portraits here. And he's actually dealing with, you know, violence in Chile and South America too. So, you know, there's many of these things. You know, that's why I teach, because then people go on and do these interesting projects that could be useful. You know, they spend over $1 million pesos in tear gas, you know, all this sort of stuff. So it's you know, these are all available on the fifth corner if you want to keep looking at stuff and doing it. So to me, you know,
Фред
alternative,
показував сайт свій зі своїми проектами, з його проектами його студентів, де можете подивитися різні варіанти, як люди освітлювали різні теми, висвітлювали.
to me, the alternative work is now the mainstream.
І зараз для нього, ну, ці альтернативні проекти, це і є мейнстрім. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up, but I just had one more question. Now this war photography, dramatic photography, it's now on social media where everybody can see it, and we see it, of course, as recipients, and we get traumatized by it. I think every time we look through multiple times a day, and I wonder, but you know, Instagram blocks it. It says it's sensitive content. So Ukrainians, we are reposting these pictures and trying to bring attention of other people towards what's happening in Ukraine. And Instagram censors it. So the only people who end up seeing it is us. And it's only us who gets mostly traumatized by it. And I've been wondering, what do you think? How should we act and work with this war photography on our personal social media?
To me, that's such an important question that you're raising. One thing is, I would love Ukrainians to curate some of the current war photography and tell us which are the 10 important pictures to look at and why, from your point of view. You know, I could see lots of pictures and lots of them look like things, you know, like World War II or look like Vietnam or look like something else. But if you took a city and you said, if you want to know about Odessa, you want to know about Kyiv, this is the 10 pictures to look at. From your point of view as curators, not as photographers, that would be important. Another important thing is, I look at a lot of pictures of violence for many, many years. And I don't do it late at night before I sleep. And I try to keep the window open. And I try to look at flowers or trees. And I try to talk to people when I see the images, because any of us can get traumatized, not just by being the photographer, but by looking at the pictures. When I teach human rights and photography, which I teach a lot, the first day I tell the students, Do not be alone when you look at those pictures. Do not do it before you go to sleep. Talk to people, keep the window open, look at the sun, do different things, because you don't want to be constantly re-traumatized and traumatized and traumatized. You have to try to defend against it and control it to a certain extent. But I would love, as an outsider from Ukraine, from any country in the world, to have people live in the country tell me what are the important pictures. The first assignment I give when I teach human rights is, if somebody is from Bangladesh or somebody is from Rwanda or somebody is from Armenia, come to class and show us the 10 or 15 important pictures from your country from social media, not the ones that you made, but you curate for us. And I have learned so much that way by the people who live there.
This is such a nice task to give everybody, actually, to try it.
Do it, and I'd love to see what you come up with.
Maybe this will be our next task.
Yeah, this could be our next task for this week.
I'll just tell you one story. I had a student from China. I don't know if you all understand the English at this point, but we'll just keep going.
Люда, треба перекласти про цю ідею з кураторством 10 фотографій.
So I asked,
just one sec. Фред запропонував, сказав, проблема з цим травматизацією фотографіями. Не треба їх дивитися перед сном, не треба їх дивитися наодинці. Краще дивитися їх з кимось і обговорювати, щоб не себе постійно в це не заганяти. І він би хотів, замість того, щоб дивитися на всі ці жахливі кадри, він би хотів побачити 10 кадрів, які були куровані українцем, які би зробив вибірку і сказав, ось ці 10 важливих фотографій про Україну варто переглянути прямо зараз. І він завжди просить це своїх студентів зробити, які нові в нього з'являються з їхніх, там, з інших країн. І Юля каже, давай, пропонує це зробити завданням на наступний тиждень, щоб кожен з вас вибрав 10 фотографій, які ви вважаєте важливі, за останні 2 місяці, за час війни. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So I've been giving this assignment for many years. So I had a student from China, and one of the pictures he curated from China was of middle-aged people holding hands in the middle of the street.
Одного разу він курував фотографію з Китаю, де був чоловік там 40-30 років, який тримав жінку за руку. So he was holding a woman in the middle of the street.
No, men and women, like 40-year-old, were all holding hands.
Там було багато людей середнього віку, які всі тримали за руки.
And they were stopping traffic.
І вони зупиняли транспорт.
Why? Because their children were taking the examination for university in the building next door, and they wanted it to be quiet.
Тому що їхні діти здавали екзамен в сусідньому будинку, і вони хотіли, щоб було тихо.
I learned so much about China from that one picture.
Я стільки знав про Китай тільки з однієї фотографії.
And no outsider would know that.
І ніякі людина ззовні ніколи про це не дізналася.
But if you're interested in doing it, I could talk to Photodemic and maybe they would publish how you curate. I think it would be fascinating. I think it'd be really interesting.
І якщо вам цікаво, то я би запитав цей сайт Фотодемік, на якому вони публікують різні проекти. Було б дуже цікаво публікувати ваші варіанти цих фотографій про Україну. Oh, they are sending hearts. Look at them.
I'm having lunch with the editor of Photodemic on Monday, so I could mention it to him if you're interested, and I'm sure he will say yes.
Окей. Він каже, в понеділок буде говорити якраз з редактором цього сайту Photodemic і може згадати за нас, за цю ідею. Look how happy they are now.
So did we accomplish something?
Well, they have to work first to accomplish it.
We accomplished hope for today.
That's a good thing to accomplish.
Yeah, it was a great honor to have you here, Fred. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. The rest of us who are not here are going to watch it in the recording.
No, but for you guys, just keep going, do work, curate, photograph, do things. push it forward. You have a lot to say, and a lot of people want to hear or see what you have to say. I'm speaking for everybody else, but there's a lot of people who are waiting for what you produce.
Вам є багато що розказати, є багато людей, які хочуть це почути, тому продовжуйте працювати і фотографувати, і знімати, і робити як можна більше всього. Thank you very much. They're sending in chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred, for coming.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and just let me know how I can help.
Yes, we'll stay in touch, and I hope to see you soon.
You will. I hope one day, not just as a rectangle.
Yes, for sure. Okay. Then take care, everybody. Всім дякую за увагу. Приходьте ще і пишіть свій фідбек в чаті.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. It was
Thank
so
you.
interesting.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye,
Good luck.
everyone.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.